I want us to write down some programming ideas of what sticks out to you and why you would program for that. And then we'll talk about it as to why that might work, why it might not work, and what our goal is. You got one? Do you need one or no? Sure. Yeah. You good? Good? Good. I'll get you guys a piece of paper in a second. So the first person, all right, and what's good is I picked these two people mainly because I've had some success with them over the past couple months. And it seems like some of the stuff I guessed worked out pretty well. So at least we have something to compare to, say like, all right, did this work or not work? And then we kind of work our way through the details. So client one, she came in. She's gained 20 pounds since 2019. Her injury history is she has a replaced first metatarsal head. So like in her right toe, it's fused, so she can't really get big toe extension. Right? So the other thing too, that while we're listening to the injury history, start to form like a mental map as to like, what would this person probably be limited in? Or, hey, is there a pattern as to like what you're seeing in terms of all of their injuries in a certain spot or a certain like injury history? So right foot, all right. She also has had a lot of plantar fasciitis on that foot as well. She can't kneel on that right knee. So anything half kneeling, you put her on her right knee and it would hurt. Her hips are arthritic, but mostly the right hip is painful. She's on medication for it. She was diagnosed with osteoarthritis. And then her upper back muscles tend to lock up. She has right shoulder has gotten locked up in the past. Her hands and wrists also show signs of arthritis. And then C4, C5, she pinched a nerve and had terrible neck pain and finally got relief after like a couple months of taking muscle relaxers and like doing really nothing. So her main concern when she came in was like, every time I try to go start exercising, my neck is killing me. And it was like excruciating. She couldn't do anything. So really that was the big thing was I want to come in, I want to train, but I don't want to get hurt in the process. All right, so right first metatarsal head, right foot plantar fasciitis. I think that was actually on both sides, but mainly on the right side. Can't kneel on the right knee. Hips are arthritic, but mostly the right side. Upper back muscles get locked up. Right shoulder's gotten locked up in the past. Hands and wrists are arthritic. C4, C5, pinched nerve and terrible neck pain. That is her main chief complaint of being cautious. So here's her assessment. So here's her assessment.
How old is she?
55, I think is what she's at. Maybe early 60s. It's the one time I didn't write down age because she's actually someone I know from previously. So movement, hip flexion. Now here's the thing. Just because I wrote good, take it with a grain of salt, right? Like it may not be good. So it might be something to consider whenever you see something like this, just to be like, I wonder, all right? So hip flexion was good on both sides. ER, good on the right side, but not on the left. All right, so we have right now we're feeling this map of like, hey, both of our ER measures in our hip seem like they're good on the right side, but not on the left. We have a left hip doesn't have the regular ER. IR is negative on both sides, so she's missing internal rotation on both sides. Her active straight leg raise is good on both sides, right? So she was pretty much up at 90 degrees on both sides. Her shoulders, ER is not good on both sides, right? She doesn't have full ER on both sides. Internal rotation is also not good on both sides. That was pretty limited. Adduction is not good on both sides, so she couldn't bring the elbow across on both sides. Overhead flexion, not good on the right, but like decently okay on the left. Her ISA was like someplace in the middle. Like it was like dead nuts, like kind of like this 90 degrees, and I was like, I don't know. And it was also like kind of dynamic. Like it moved, but maybe not as much as I would hope it would. So it was kind of like this really like junk measurement to give me information. And then her toe touch was good, and her squat was not good. All right, and I'll give you one more piece of information that might help. Her squat was like horrible in the sense of she could get to like here, and then it was like to get up out of it. Like no power whatsoever. So like the first thing we did with her was box squat her to the red plyo box, with a yoga block on top of it. So it's almost basically the height of the big box. And that was hard for her to get up and down like 6 times. All right? She's not like severely overweight. Like you would just say, like, all right, yeah, you could lose a few pounds, but that's about it. Right? But that would be the first thing to consider. All right? And then I'm going to show you a couple pictures to help give you more information. All right, so that's a half kneeling chop position. What's the first things that maybe stick out to you? You can come up. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So see how far back her hip is compared to her shoulder. All right, and then. No, go ahead. Yeah. So you might see the foot kind of torn out. So that's her left foot. So left foot. So technically we should have it. So let's look at this from the back. What do you notice here?
Her whole hip is shifted.
Yeah, right? Like look at just her shirt line. Like look how high that right hip is. All right? So we coached her a little bit and she kind of figured it out. And you see how it leveled out a little bit? Okay. So, based on our information, what do we do with this person? Send them someplace else.
Yeah. Send her to Lisa. Something for you. We don't have any
I already did it. She actually did a lot of programming. I just took it. So, first off, what's a red flag for this person?
Her whole right side, yeah.
Right? Everything on that right side is like hurts. So.
And the only thing that was working was her ER, her hip. But,
Supposedly,
Yeah.
right? Because when we checked her shoulders, she didn't have it.
both, yeah.
So what would we then maybe assume about her hip measures? They're also off. Yes, right? So we have right side that hurts. We have limited range all over. All right? The next piece would be toe touch is good, but her squat isn't. Active straight leg is good, but like her squat isn't. Why? Like what would we maybe assume? Again, I couldn't get a really good ISA angle on her, but what would we assume about an ISA angle for someone that can't produce power? Narrow or wide? So more often than not, she's most likely a narrow because she can't produce power, and the things that we should expect we don't have. So we have a very compressed individual who is a narrow who loves their right side more than anything else, right?
When she did a squat, did she complain of kind of like pain or anything?
Her knees.
Just
Her knees started to bug her. Yep. All right. So it was like you ever seen someone squat and they go like this? Ooh. They do that and then they come up. That's what we had. All right.
so not only did it look bad, it didn't feel good.
Correct.
Okay.
She could.
Heel wedge made no difference.
So again, it made her go down a little smoother, but she still couldn't get back up. Yep. And that's where all of a sudden, kind of stuff like that. All right. So if we've got a whole right side that hurts, we have a limited range of motion all over, and she's a narrow, where would we potentially start programming for this person? Like let's pick. You guys, I want everyone to write 2 warm-up exercises and 2 strength stuff, and then 1 like thing you would experiment with or test, so that you would be able to recheck your progress. Like what would be a good test for her that we could come back and say, like, all right, after we do our exercises, we want to test this again to see if we're making progress. If you need more information or clarification, I might be able to give it to you. Ooh, Darth Vader over here? I thought she was going to pull out a lightsaber and got me. If we can, let's try to spend like 2 more minutes on it, and then we'll kind of go around. One test. Like, what would you test on this person as a way to show, like, oh, we're progressing? And then we'll kind of go around, and you can say what you picked and why you picked it. Again, there's no wrong, because we don't know. It may work. It's just kind of like, where do we want to start our thinking in the process? Oh, that's a great episode. My nieces love that show, and every time they come to my parents' house, I'm always like, yeah, it's like 6 in the morning. I'm like, hi, PJ Masks. And I'm like, oh, you're lucky. So lucky. So lucky.
I know it though. I get it the second time around.
All right, you guys ready? Yeah, it's again. Let's not at the end of the world if you don't have it. We'll figure out. Beth, start us off.
Warm-ups.
Yep. So what's 2 warm-up exercises that you'd potentially pick?
General, I was just like that 90-90 on the back of the one leg up, and then just like general foam rolling because
So maybe.
it's so tight.
So here's the thing is, interestingly enough, which foam roller you think she uses in here?
Which foam roller?
Yeah,
The pink one.
the pink one. She uses the pink one because you're 100% correct. She can't tolerate the pressure from any of the other ones. So that is a huge piece. Like if I want to get some kind of soft tissue stuff, it can't be that like intense because she's going to block up even harder. So good idea. When you said 90-90 breathing on the wall with one leg up, which leg are we picking up?
The right.
Or right, because you're going to shift her into her left, correct? Awesome. The one thing you have to consider is if I put them on the wall with my feet at this position, well, so not even her toes, because you're actually keeping her foot flat on the wall. It's more of, does she have a hip internal rotation to get into a hip flex 90-90 position?
Oh, I thought you put it flat on a box.
Oh, so you're talking about supine hook lying one.
Okay, yeah.
Then yes, you would be correct.
Okay, sorry.
Then that is.
What were you thinking?
So if she was lying on the wall with her feet up on the wall at a 90-90 position, so yes. Does she have the hip flexion to get in that position? Also, if we bring her up into that spot, it's going to bias an IR representation, which we know she doesn't have. So,
Thinking like that one where, yeah.
yeah, so a supine hook lying left hamstring would be a good choice. A foam rolling with a soft foam roller would also be a very good choice. You nailed 2 of them. So we could go, yeah. So wait your turn, Lisa. Wait your turn. Beth, you have 2 exercises you want to put in there.
I put leg extension,
Why?
just because her feet and her knees are like pretty bad.
Mhm.
So I feel like this, she could get a little bit of quad work, which is what she needs to work to get in and up from her squat. Seems really ugly right now.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to put her. It seems like if you already are putting a box with a yoga block, like that's not very much.
Right. She doesn't have much range of motion to get up and down.
Yeah.
What else would you pick?
And I put like a split stance row, but I would have to check to see if her foot can take that back foot take that enough, but I wouldn't put her very deep into it, like a little squat, just a slight stand.
All right, and then what would you test?
That was the one I was still working on. I don't know, I feel like I can't test for anything. But
So here's the thing: is like, what would give you maybe a better indication that she's moving in the right direction? Right? It could actually be any of your previous assessments. Right? You could retest a squat. You could retest any type of joint measure if you really wanted to. So does anything stick out to you?
I guess then just do the squat and see if
She can get taller. Awesome. What do you got?
I also said the supine hook line, but I thought maybe putting yoga blocks between her ankles.
Why? What does yoga block between the ankles do?
Force ER.
Yeah, you could drive her into some ER representation. Yeah.
And then the other one was an all fours with the yoga block under her left knee.
Ooh, I like that. To shift her into her left side.
Can she kneel? I thought she couldn't kneel.
So here's the thing: is it does. So again, that would be a maybe, right? You'd have to see if she can. Because what might work is if, as I get her in that position, as I shift her over there, I can unload it enough that she doesn't get any discomfort. Maybe. I mean, that's for a narrow, like that would be a good left hip shift, right? Right. And then what do you got for strength exercises?
I was thinking a deadlift, not a single leg, but just with
Regular
the
deadlift.
dumbbell.
Why?
I don't know.
She has that.
It just felt right.
I was thinking all upper body stuff, and I wanted to throw something else in that wasn't a box.
All right. So I mean, maybe. Well, you'll see in a second. Like, because like we're all kind of in the same boat, which is good. What do you got in
And
the
then chest press. Single arm cable chest press.
standing?
Yeah.
Why?
Just so you could bias her position and use her other arm to move.
So get her some like rotation back and chest press. Yep, I like that one. And what would you test?
I was thinking just go back and retest hip ER, IR.
Could be why not, right? You could. You might see some change in that. And if you can make them both symmetrical, or at least moving in the right direction, that would be a good start. Denise, what do you got?
I had the wall supported reach,
Awesome. Why?
just to have her back up against the wall supporting her neck, but then also getting her into a 90-degree angle. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And then after you had talked, I was thinking a cross connect on the floor.
Yeah.
With the small roller.
Yeah, to give her like a placeholder. Why would you use that?
I didn't quite know why I decided I wanted to do that, but I
You and Noel in the same boat.
because some of this thing it didn't seem like she had it. I figured that would help capture some of the motion back.
Yeah. It could be, yeah. And put her on her back is, yeah, we can try it. I like it. All right, and what do you got for exercises?
I actually thought a leg press.
Okay.
Just because if she can't go back to the squat, you got to strengthen this somehow. So I just figured
Could be an
lying
awesome
down
one.
a little bit
Yeah.
more, maybe.
Takes weight off the pelvic floor, right? She's not up against gravity as much. So maybe it might help her a little bit. What else?
And then I had a hinged cable fly with the left hip back.
To shift her backwards?
Yes.
Awesome.
And then I just had test squat.
Yeah, that's a perfect one. Like, we can all have the same answers. That'd be cool for all. What do you got?
I was just trying not to go to my favorite, which is the 90-90 or the supine leg. So I said the seated hip shift
Yep.
to get into the left side.
Awesome.
Also, maybe just the mini band with the upper back breathing
Yep.
at some point.
Yep. Well, real quick, why would you pick that one?
Because she's so jacked up here, she probably needs a little bit more air in
Yeah.
that space.
Like, something to look at, right, is when you saw that first picture when she was doing the chop, right? Her chest is pushed out over in front of her hip for a reason. She's getting force into the ground by doing this. All right? So most likely we have, again, she doesn't have full range of motion up here, so we already know it's on both sides. We've got an upper, like sternum and upper back that are compressed together. So we need to create more space somehow. So that, I would agree. That's a good one.
And then I thought about that Campo deadlift you were talking about.
Mhm.
Shifting her into that
Left side.
Into that left side. I also thought about doing the leg press laying down, so you're more in the squat position, getting some load there, and then alternating dumbbell press either on the bench or on the ground, because you could do it in that hook leg
Yep.
position. And then I thought that's easy to kind of ramp up.
Yeah, you can still load it.
But also, doesn't have really good hip flexion, but she's able to touch the floor.
Right? So this is
So that's not like,
there's you've got a lot of things that are like contraindicated, right? In terms of like when I say active straight leg raise and toe touch were good, this is someone that like kind of palms the floor, right? And you're like, oh, but you can't literally like show me any other range.
because she's flexing. it's fine.
We'll because you're like probably 100% correct, all right? And we'll get it. What do you got?
Thank you for letting me go last.
Jeannie was like, Jesus Christ, I can't get on.
No, I had a couple of things because some of her stuff reminds me a lot of things we do with Annie. So
Yep.
I would do like the kneeling cross connect, like how you had her in that position, put the block with the stepper over there and the rope.
Those are the chopping.
Have her do-
Yep.
Yeah, the chop and have her do a couple of rests like we started doing there and straighten her out.
Yep.
And then also the supine, I forgot what you call it, but you lay on your back and you put your arms up and do the breaths.
Yeah, it's like an overhead reach.
Yeah.
Yep. So why would you do the overhead reach?
Just to get the space back when you're doing
Yeah.
that.
So if I've got a narrow that's compressed here, if I can get them to open up a little bit, yeah, I mean, without orienting everything, we might create a little more room. Yep.
So what's it called again? The
Supine overhead reach. Yeah.
So yeah, that. And then for the exercises, I was thinking either a cable pull on the Cybex, but I didn't know if the foot would be able to do it,
I think both guys had a good question on that, which is good.
or spider curls, where the bench is up and you're doing the curls, but
So why would you use that one?
because it takes all the pressure off your back.
It's going to open up that, like we have a compression on the front side, and if I breathe in and do this, I got to expand posteriorly when I curl, which is awesome.
And then for the other one, I was honestly just thinking like the hamstring curls and the quad machine or the leg press way back laying down too.
So like a huge, like almost a really biased to a squat pattern.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. And what would you test?
The same like the
Squat. All right. Awesome, guys. We're all cooking on all cylinders. This is fantastic. So here is the first phase that I wrote for her. All right. So seated upper back breathing, short squat hold, seated hip shifting with a reach. We put her on the bike. Then I had a standing cross connect hold with the RNT at the knee. So RNT being reactive neuromuscular technique. So I'm pulling her knee forward so she has to lock out against it and hold the position. Half kneeling, reaching row really slowly. Bent over cable fly. Heel elevated box squat slowly. And then back on the bike and side lying axial rolling. Right? So kind of like some of the stuff you guys said, actually, almost like dead nuts. Guess what? So here's what happened. Couldn't do the half kneeling reaching row because she couldn't kneel on her knee, right? That's when we found out she couldn't kneel. And also, after thinking about it, if I've got someone that is compressed that much in their upper back, should I be pulling them more into that necessarily? Probably not, right? I think her feedback was after doing the rows, there was something that she felt like her shoulder blade was like cramping up, right? And it was like, probably not a good sign. So then we did it standing, and again, same idea. Couldn't get really into that position for very long, so we scrapped that and completely moved it to a standing, just kind of short staggered stance press, right? And the one thing that we have to keep in mind with all this stuff, where's her center of gravity, forward or back? 100% forward. So everything we kind of want to be doing is shifting her backwards. All right. So again, if I'm rowing, it's going to be kind of hard because as I compress, it's going to want to pull me forward. So if I press, I can shift backwards better, right, and create a little more compression on the front side, and hopefully shift me into a little bit more of an earlier propulsive foot or even mid stance. So we switched it to a one-arm press. We did a bent over cable fly with the left leg back. That worked pretty well. We tried to do more of the box squat, but she could literally only handle the eccentric. So she would go down really slowly and then kind of like get up however she wanted. All right. So here's my note was may need to start at the bottom of the squat. So,
I was just gonna say, like, did you try reverse?
so you may need to do that. I also wrote or leg press. right? So that's end up what we went to. Think about loading a box squat to a pad, cross connect step up, and split stance cable press, and then mainly what with the big thing that has been hugely helpful is her just cardiovascular aerobic has improved drastically. So we got all of our intensity pretty much on the bike in the first month, and it was more of us figuring out what position to put her in. So her split stance press, I forgot, it wasn't a stagger stance. Her split stance press, we put her up on a step. So she had like 2 risers here, not into full hip flexion, but here, and she did her presses like this. So it was like a standing cross connect press. That worked really well. She could feel her stomach working very hard to hold her in that position. And then between that and the RNT, everything we did the first like 2 months was just to get her stacked up again here and be able to put force down while holding that position. So she like, didn't really move that much lower body-wise from that standing spot. She did some more body stuff as we went. So then, you can call it whatever you want. I just called it a cross connect. Yeah, thanks. Noel heard that. So this is her most recent program. All right, we've progressed her now to a side bridge with cable reach. Right, so she's on the floor here. She's got the cable here pushing out and going up like that. Why do we have the cable pushing out? To push her back, right? So she can push here and then sink back, and she feels her abs working very hard on the obliques. Then we have our supine, our 90-90 kettlebell overhead reach. We do both. All right. Originally, I was having her do one side. So at the end, what we found that helped out with her right knee pain was actually having her lie on her right side, right, like this, putting a pad underneath here, and then stacking a sandbag up here to compress her pelvis back together. That was another thing that we should have probably noted. She's got a pretty wide pelvis. Right? So if I have a wide, let's just say bowl here and a narrow torso, am I going to be good at producing force back up? Definitely not. Right? So we lied her on her side, tried to smush that back together a little bit, and after 2 minutes of just sitting there, she went back up and she tested half kneeling. She's like, oh, my knee doesn't hurt. So in that sense, we did that a lot at the end of her session. So now she's got a 90-90 supine kettlebell overhead reach, right, which is what we're trying to do. She does a supine foam roller cross connect. So that's, instead of having her with her foot on the wall, she's got her foot on the foam roller here, and she's coming up and going that way. And that's going to give her a little more hamstring to hold the pelvis and then go with the cross connect. She's now progressed to skipping. So I wasn't sure about skipping at first because of that. And seems to be all right. We've tested it now for a month and a half. There was one instance where she was like, oh, my foot kind of bugged me after that. I don't know if it was completely because of that. There was other stuff that she was doing. She like walked forever that day too. She does med ball throws. Now she's doing spark sprints. She's on the leg press, and we're at a 3 and 3. And she's up to 170 pounds right now. She does a supine hook lying dumbbell floor press. She does a wide stance with a bar Zercher box squat. We took it away this next phase because she hates doing them because they're really hard for her. But she's down to the medium box. All right? And she can get up out of it like smoothly. And then...
Can I ask a question? What specific exercise do you think is helping get her out of her squat? Like some of those drop tank moves that you do with your athletes, did any of those?
So I'll go back a couple phases. So we also did a TRX row. Now with her maintaining a wide upper back. Right? So she's not squeezing and pulling herself up. She's staying here, and she just kind of pulls to about here without necessarily heavily compressing the upper back. So she feels actually a lot more arms than anything else. And we're working on a skater squat, and then she's back on the bike. So the big thing is, let's pull up a phase 3, because that might give a better... skater squat is we use a TRX, and we kind of get, it's almost like a hybrid of like a single leg deadlift and squat. And the TRX there is just to give you a little bit of balance, right? A little control. So what we did in her warm-up was we progressed her to standing. We then did a short squat box press down, which is like the box is here. You let your knees go forward, and then you're pushing through the box to push yourself up and away. With a ramp, she like felt a lot of quads and a lot of abs and like breathing in that position. And then a standing rope one leg hold, right? So she's going to pull the cable up here and hold the here. So it's pulling her down, and she's got to hold that stacked position that we worked on in our chop. Then step up with a cross connect. So she's stepping up and holding that position. So we progressed her from all those standing cross connects to now holding a load and being able to step up and go into a cross connect. And a high to low cable press. So she's up here, pushing down. Again, as I push down, it allows me to move backwards. And then alternating cable fly. And actually, we did deadlift her for a little bit because she did well with it. And again, we want to get the pelvic floor to shift backwards and also get stiff, because if I can get some nutation in the sacrum, I'm going to be able to get that to tighten up and give me some spring out of the hole. So
She did great on that.
yeah, she did. Yeah, she did actually really well. We had to be careful because a couple times she's like, I feel my back, right? Mainly because she's already in that position, right? She's kind of like, if you watch her kind of walk around, it's kind of a little bit like that, especially when she gets tired. Like immediately goes to that. Forever ago was a gymnast, so it's kind of probably something that's ingrained a little bit more, right? So a lot of the stuff you guys thought of is all the stuff we moved to, right? And it's a good starting place. You have to test it to see, is it going to come out the way you want? Because like that first program I wrote, I was like, no. But some of those things we stuck with the whole time and have progressed them pretty smoothly along the.
First program you wrote, did you scrap it after day one, or did you run it for your 4 times and go, this isn't working, and you tweaked it as you went?
Half kneeling reaching row, first day, out of there, changed it to again, I was like, all right, so we can't do a split stance cable press. How do I keep this foot flat? And Bill still gave her like a push and do it. I don't want to put her on her back because, again, if I don't want her to compress really hard and try to produce force. I want to keep her here and be able to still get something out of it. So then I was like, all right, let's put a foot up on the step and try that. And she did really well with it. So, and the other part, too, is the whole time that we're doing this, you remember that picture where you saw her in a chop position and her whole thing was like this, right? So a lot of times when we're holding those cross-connect positions, it was to get her to kind of bring this hip back underneath her and hold it, and then she'd feel a lot of like lateral glute trying to hold her in place as she brought her center of gravity back too. So all those things worked really well. For someone, and the best part, do you think she's had any neck pain? 0. So that has been huge, which has been really, really the main reason why. So you can see how like all those things kind of funneled into a lot of that stuff, and then all of a sudden we hit like a moment where it's like, oh, you're no longer doing the low level stuff. Like we're actually moving weight safely because we've stacked on top of it of like a good foundation. Right. Any thoughts or questions? All right, let's go to number 2. All right. So, main reason he's coming in was, he lost a good amount of weight and he wants to start moving better because he knows like that's the next piece of it. He's 59, 5'11", used to play a lot of sports. Wants to like put muscle back on, right? He lost all this weight and he's like, I feel like I'm starting to waste away a little bit. I want to put some muscle back on, but has some limitations. So morning feet are stiff. He's broken his left foot before and his toes, broken toes and also fractured an ankle. Both knees are heavily arthritic. Right knee worse than the left. He had arthroscopic meniscus repair on his left, I think it is. His right hip has more tension in like his TFL area than his left. His mid upper back got hurt and his left ribs can be numb. He fell on his right shoulder like 20 years ago and tore something. I'm not sure if he had it repaired or not. His left shoulder had a pinched nerve, feels tension down the back of his neck sometimes. I will, as we get through this, I'll give you one other piece of information. So, hip flexion, it was okay, except he had pain in his left hip. Like I would say he was past 90, but like barely, and his left one definitely pinched and didn't like it. ER on the right side was good, not good on the left. Inter-rotation on both sides was not good. Active straight leg raise was 45 degrees, like about 45 degrees on both sides. So like he's like barely getting halfway up. Shoulders, right side was good, left was not good. Inter-rotation, right was not good and left was good. Adduction, right was no good, left was good. Overhead flexion, both were not good. Wide ISA and not dynamic. Toe touch was not good, and his squat was not good, but also painful. And I will give you one more piece of information. He is definitely a bow-legged representation, right? So we have an ER like orientation in both legs, and they are both like coming out. And then I'll show you a picture. Yeah, I know this. All right, so two things to be mindful of. Yeah, where do you see the lines? And where do you see some movement or symmetry discrepancies?
Full right side's like, into that one.
Yeah.
It's like right shoulder's lower.
That's on the right side.
That is bad. It almost looks like a bulbous on the right side.
So this would be a good. No, that's his low back.
Just like,
Way to be gentle with your comments.
well, he's not here, right?
Oh, is it right?
What? What is that? A butt porpoise? All right. So
Watch the video.
no, no. All right. So, let's what sticks out. So right off the bat, what sticks out from the picture?
Right shoulder drop.
Right. So we got a right shoulder compressed or drop on that right side. All right. What else? Look at the lines in his shirt. Where would you say he's most heavily compressed in his back? Yeah, like pretty much like right there, right? Like everything else looks like it's actually moving backwards except for that. That looks like it's jammed forward. All right, so we're talking like a lower rib cage compression, posterior compression. All right, anything else in the injury history stick out to you guys or the movement screen? So both knees, heavily arthritic. We also said that he has a bow-legged presentation.
what was painful about his squat, his knees?
Yes. Yep. Knees are a chief complaint. So any other red flags that you would make note before you start writing a program for this guy? During hip flexion, yeah, he got a pinching in his left hip hurt. And then,
Did you see him shifting his shoulder? His left shoulder was doing the same thing?
so left shoulder, he also, he fell on his right shoulder a while ago. That was also something that he was pretty like, man, this doesn't feel good when I start training. So that was more of what he's concerned about, but left shoulder had a pinched nerve as well at one point. He feels tension down the back of his neck. So I'll give you a couple of things. A, wide ISA, not dynamic rib cage. So like the first thing that we gotta be mindful of is that, right? So any range of motion that this guy's probably presenting is some type of compensatory orientation, because when you just see what is happening on his upper back or his backside, he's got it's literally I can't to your point, it's really hard to do what you have.
Just sitting there?
Yes. So we had him in this position, right? So in order to get so if you stand here, right, and I want you to push your hips forward so that your knees kind of turn out, and then you still got to keep your feet flat on the ground, right? And then I want you to
And that's how he is.
and that's kind of what you're getting. How weird does that feel?
Well, that's why he has the outer hip pain.
Okay. So, do you if you think about all right, well, how does this person walk without some kind of discomfort someplace? It's going to be very hard. So that would be the other thing I would hugely consider is a wide ISA that is not dynamic. All right. So we have right shoulder heavily dropped, lower rib cage compression pushing forward, and a wide ISA not dynamic. So let's pick 2 warm up, 2 strength, and 1 test. No cheating, guys. Come on. Squat was painful, and it wasn't good. Yep. So yes, knee pain. Gina, just so you know, you're going first this time. Sorry, rules are rules. Two minutes, then pencils down. Yeah. He's looking to get stronger, right? Because he's been kind of just dieting for a while, but he hasn't really done anything that kind of gets him to that sense of like, oh, I got this, but he's a wide ISA. So he's already pretty heavily compressed. So you have to be careful with that. Both, A to P, right? Because you don't get a wide ISA. You get it because I'm getting smushed front to back, and that pushes everything out to the side. I'll give you one thing to think about, all right? In order to get a bow leg representation, the femurs have to be like pushed into like a forward position, and then they orient into ER, and then they curve back to IR, and then the tibia curves back to like from ER to IR to get to the floor. So that's why you get this like bow. And actually, I'll show you a video of his leg press. Actually, come on, gather around, gather around. Okay, so this is on the left side. All right, so you see how the tibia is here, and then you can see the shiny part of his shin. That's his tibia, right? See how it bows out and then comes back in? Yeah. So that's the left side. Now, doesn't look too horrible, right? But like just look at where the inside of his knee is and then outside of his calf is. So you see how the line of torque is actually on the inside of his foot because this is bowing out. So this is his left, and in the morning, his left is usually his chief complaint. Right? Now if we go to his right, you see that, like, look at where this is and where that is. You see how much more of a twist he has in that right knee? Like, look at his ankles here. Look at where his knee ends up, right? And you can see his calf muscle way out here on the side. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so that's a big twist, okay? So that's something like, I mean, look at the tibia bone. You see how much it bends? Yeah. That's kind of what you're dealing with. And like, all right, so I've got a foot that's kind of doing this because this thing's coming down. I've got a knee that's getting pushed out to the side, but it's really turning back in here, turning back out, and then back into the floor.
So that doesn't hurt when he does that?
So nope. So and again, this was actually this morning. That was this morning. Yep. He did really well today. All right, Gina, lead us off.
All right.
2 warm-up exercises. What do you got?
Sitting on the box with the band on the wrist and doing the.
Because that one picture, you took it right away.
No, because you always have people do that whenever you show the picture and the shirt is wrinkled like that. That's what you always have to do.
So what are we trying to do with that?
Just open them up.
We're trying to get that upper back to shift posteriorly, right? We want to expand this upper dorsal rostral area so that all of a sudden they have a place to move backwards to. All right. So what else you got?
And then I was thinking the same stuff we were talking about with the other person with the cross connects or the laying on the floor with the overhead, just really just opening them up all around.
With a wide ISA, do you want to put them on their back or on their side? Side.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The same thing. I didn't want to write the same thing I wrote last time.
So that's a part of it is like, all right, we need to probably put them on their side first to close off one space so they can expand. What are wide ISAs good at turning or poor at turning? Bad, right? So we need to start to reinforce one side compressing and the other side expanding so that they can actually shift into those spaces. So not a bad idea. Yeah, it's good, valid. I would go with that too. So what do you got for 2 exercises?
I was going to say the bench press because he wants to get stronger, and if he had to put the knees up,
Could be useful. Shoulders aren't the most reliable. Would you want to put them in a bilateral, like stuck position on a bench on their back for a wide ISA?
No.
Probably not the first place I would go, but you don't know. It could work because you'll see some of the stuff I picked that would be like, oh well, it's the same thing, kind of.
That's what I was thinking with the feet up.
Which is a good idea, right? Takes them out. It kind of might be able to give them a little bit of a tilt to shift backwards. What else did you pick for another strength exercise?
The machines for the legs because I don't know, it made me nervous to like have to squat with them.
Yeah. He's got some turns in there. You want to put him in a place that you can maybe do one limb at a time or keep it fixed, right? And then what would you test?
Squat, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, you're good. Lisa, what do you got?
So I was thinking of that shifting on the side.
Side lying axial rolling.
Yeah. And a sideline cross connect.
Okay.
And then I was thinking rolling arm bar to get that overhead flexion a little bit. And some hip flexion. Maybe a bent over chest fly. Fly.
Yep. And then what would you test?
Well, I had some other stuff, but then I
Well, so good. No,
probably
go.
test the squat because
Okay.
that was the
Pain
painful
thing.
one.
So go ahead. Go. What else did you have in there?
No, I was thinking, I know you said you probably don't want to do a row if somebody's jacked up back here, but
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking a chest on the bench and doing a row that way.
Yeah.
And maybe either alternating or both arms or the spider curl that.
I would go with those.
Chest
Yeah.
compress.
I love it. I love it. Those are all good stuff. Both of you guys are right on point. Actually, you took into account that wide ISA really well in terms of the turning stuff, right? That was huge.
So I had the sideline breathing also to
Yep.
start. And then I said wall sit, tail tuck, yoga block between knees, breathing forward.
To do what?
For one.
I don't know, but why would you pick that? Yeah,
Why did I pick that?
yeah, because there's some good stuff in there.
Because I wanted to, because his back is always, the lower back is always coming forward. I thought if I had it pressed against the wall.
Yeah, I'm with you. The one thing we might want to be considerate of, right? There's a reason why this area is pushed out, right? Is it because he's in a counter-nutated or nutated position? It's probably because he's already tucked a little bit, right? And that's also how you would maybe get the femur starting to orient into that E-yard representation. So you might have to be careful with the tailbone tuck, right? But the idea of the yoga block between the knees and squeezing, really good idea, right? Because I'm going to promote a little bit more of a IR bias and like adduction that might open up some space backwards. So it might be a really good one. You just got to be careful. I'm not really sure.
So then I was doing the yoga block thing also on the leg curl.
Between the knees.
I was thinking between the ankles.
Between the
That's
ankles.
what I initially was thinking.
So what would that promote? If I'm squeezing my ankles together, is it going to create?
Oh, is that going to push this out more? So between the knees to push
Would
this
probably be our first place.
higher.
Yeah. And again, you might be careful with that, Denise, just because again, if he's already a little bit tucked under, a really hard posterior compression here is probably going to pull him further into it. But it might work really well too, right? Again, you could change some of those things to make it work really well because you can still get the tissue to. Again, if I get him to squeeze, I might get him to turn on some of these things here that are definitely not like they're yielding all the time because in order to have this, I have to have a compressive tension on the outside.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. If I was pulling this in and trying to get this.
Yeah, so it could definitely work. It could definitely work.
And then I also had a hinge bicep cable curl.
When you say hinged, are we talking like
Just like a
this
side- no,
or?
just like a, yeah.
Okay.
And I had a heel wedge, but I don't know if I.
Could be a really good idea. Why would you use a heel wedge? He's like a conductor. She's like, yes, I will take all of them.
Let's just do this. That was a question mark.
So a heel wedge might be a really good idea because it's going to give him a little bit more space to kind of push him backwards, right? It's going to bring him into like an earlier representation, which means he can kind of probably sit back a little bit better because I used it. So yeah, it might be a good idea.
And then I didn't have a test. I
Test.
didn't know what to do.
Okay.
I also thought seated breathing.
Yep.
And then left glute max.
Why left glute max?
Because
Let me tell you exactly why.
to try to fire up the right side.
Like a left side lying right glute max or a right side lying left glute max? Which butt cheek are you trying to engage?
The right.
So you mean the left side lying,
Left side lying.
right hip
right
opening up?
max.
Okay. So if I've got a,
Show what that would look like.
so I've got my feet on the wall, right? I'm here like this. I'm gonna slide my right knee forward and then open it up. Okay. Something to
You
consider.
should probably be on the other side.
Think about this for a second. If I slide my knee forward and I squeeze and this gets really tight and it's already pushed out in front of my left, is that going to help with my femur coming in or turn down it further? So you're right. So you're right.
I can just tell you that.
So if I clench my butt cheeks really hard and push my pelvis forward, right, do my femurs turn in or they turn out? They're going to turn out, right? So what you're doing is you're advancing the right side forward and then opening it up, right, which is kind of where he's already at. He's already pushed forward and doing that same thing. So the reason why you get the twist in the bone, right, is because I hit these basically levels of compensatory strategy. So if I go forward a little bit, I might get a little bit of twist, but I can manage it. If I go forward a lot, now all of a sudden, because these things are pushed so far forward, I got to create space. So then it's going to twist out really hard, and then I got to put force back into the ground because I can't do this. So things start to twist back in at certain joints, and that's where all of a sudden you get like a knee that is not going to move. So wouldn't try the left sideline right glute max right off the gate, but you never know, right? What might be the good idea is in a sideline position, right? You might try an adductor pullback, right? Because that's going to shift him backwards, and then you can squeeze down. Yeah. So right position, maybe just a different exercise. And here's the thing, Noel, is like maybe it does work. I don't know. Like maybe it does help him because if you push him forward on the right side, it may get him back into his left, right? And then all of a sudden you can get some stuff back. Yeah.
I was thinking of bent over cable fly.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few, but the only would you consider that, I don't even know what you call it, that half rolling where you're...
The arm bar rolling that
Is that the arm bar
Elisa was talking about, right?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So is that a warm-up or is that...
Can be whatever you want. So remember, for someone that's really deconditioned or has a hard time, that might be their exercise where we get some load on them and they move.
Or a chop?
Same thing. Yeah. You can pick whichever one you want.
And then, I don't know, I might retest the active straight leg.
Interesting choice. Cool. What do you got?
A lot of them have been said, but I have.
Perfect.
For warm up, I probably do put them into a side plank, and do some breathing exercises in there.
Mm-hmm.
So probably just here, just to test them, and then also teach them some vacuum breathing. So on his back though, just to try to retrain him. He said they have no dynamic.
So no dynamic.
It's a-
Just run me through what vacuum breathing is real quick.
It's just you're taking in as much air as you can, and then you're
And compressing all the way out.
pressing out. So what I would do is bring that knee to the elbow to get even a little bit more of that last breath out.
Out, yeah.
To to get that feeling of what.
The ribcage closing should be, yes. And that's a good point, right? For our wide ISAs, they're stuck out here. So usually they can't fully exhale to get the ribs to come back down. So if I can get them a full and actually get an oblique to start to pull that with the exhale, yeah, that might work really, really well.
And then for the strength, I did cable row split stands,
Okay.
and then I did push-ups.
Yeah.
And then I would test them either on the push-up or a wide-legged squat.
Awesome. I love it.
And then a leg press, but with a band to keep that from
A band on the knees on the
on
outside.
the knees. Yep. So instead of going like this, he has to keep the pressure here.
Why would you want to keep him turned out further? Like why would you?
With his right leg going in like this every time.
So it has to. That's the only space he has, right? So what you're looking at is because his femurs are already out here,
Yeah.
there's no more room outside, right? So what he's got is this femur, as it comes up, it's actually turning from here in, and then you saw the tibia was way out here. So it's not that his femur is actually like driving in. It's the turn of the bone and then the turn of another bone that makes it look like it's caved in like that, because that's the only space he has available to him. So if you push him out wider, you might create more space, but you're also reinforcing the ER orientation that he's already in. So,
Were you saying to pull him in?
Huh?
Were you saying to pull him in, though?
I was like getting this one back in the space it's supposed to be in.
so,
Essentially eliminating.
so well, you'll see some of the stuff that we did, and then you might be like, oh, I think where I would use something like that. So seated upper back breathing, we put a pad under his right elbow to block up his right side. Then we did a right QL stretch. So typically when you see someone that is like this, right, this whole space is compressed. So what we did with him was we got him like this, and we turned and opened him up that way. That one just did, right QL stretch. So quadratus lumborum is like the muscle that kind of runs like this way. And then we did a left leg stance holding the weight in the right side. Or sorry, in the same side, so left hand. So what we did was we had him stand like this, and I said, let it pull you down. Just to orient him over his left leg and try to open that space up. And then we did seated hip shifting. So we tried to get him to slide back and forth and get him to turn side to side. He was on the bike, so then we did a heels elevated squat hold supported. So he held on to the 360, like the bars there, and I had him sit back and use the wedge to give him a little bit of more space to shift into, because it was an earlier propulsive foot, so he's got more range to move. Right? And then he did a short squat bicep curls. So he's here again, shifting back, curling, assisted push-up, and we tried to do an SSLDL. It sounded like a fireworks factory in his knee, right? So he's like, shit. He's like, it doesn't hurt. It just scares people, right? They feel it. And all right, and then we did a pull-off press, right? So pull-off press, we're trying to compress on one side and get him to kind of tighten up. That phase worked pretty well. Oh, shoot, I forgot to put in the seated yoga block between the knees and the rope here as an anti-extension, and he shifted backwards, right? So I've got him seated, I'm pulling this down, and then I'm having him kind of sit backwards a little bit to compress on the front side and move him back and adduct at the same time, right? That actually worked pretty well, but like the SSLDL was like, we took that out almost immediately. Like he just couldn't, again, he couldn't figure it out because he just doesn't have the room in his hip to do so, and it made his knee feel like junk. But all those things started to progress pretty well. So phase 3, still doing seated upper back breathing. We put a seated mini band around his feet and a ball between his knees. So now I've got a squeezing here, and I've got a band on the feet, so I'm pushing out against that. That's going to drive more IR kind of into that space and have him do his shifting again. So we're trying to open up that posterior part of his hip and get him back into some IR. Still doing the left stance hold with the weight. Now we're on our left ab wall, right, trying to get that to kick on. This time we were only doing the left side because he's already like that on the right. And doing a bird dog. And now we've got him kettlebell armbar rolling. Sideline breathing with the sandbag. Right, so the sandbag is his cue to, and I want him to feel the bag moving up and down. We tried the Campo deadlift. Again, did not work very well. Something, and we switched to something else. He's now doing his push-ups with assisted. He's got bent over cable flies. We've got a wide stance box squat. Right, so he's out here, and he actually sits pretty well and kind of goes up and down to the medium box. And then we tried the leg press. So we got a pretty high, notice it's a pretty high volume on the leg press, just because I wanted to see at a lightweight, could he tolerate the movement. And now we are at, other thing to note was that we did do a lot of spider curls, right, on the bench, face down, curling up. But most recently, things that worked really well. So we're still doing our seated upper back breathing. We are now at the left ab wall cable press out and a Copenhagen lift off the bench. You know what that is? Where you got your leg up on the bench, you're like in a side plank position, and you're trying to push down to the bench to lift your hips up. All right, so we're trying to drive that adduction through that left leg. First time he did that, not pretty. Like his leg was like, if the bench is over here, his leg is out here and his butt is like doing that because he couldn't feel the space. So we put his right knee underneath him and pushed off the ground and kind of helped him find where that leg should be. And now he pretty much almost can do it without the support of the bottom leg. And that's been huge. So then, about your band, he does a Zercher squat hold with a yoga block between his knees. Because his placeholder, we actually want him kind of squeezing in a little bit to hold in place because his natural thing is to always want to go that way. And if I can get him to sit back and hold that, I might create more room on the backside and get his femur to not turn out so much. All fours, opposite hand knee pickup. So he's working on doing something that looks like this, right? And being able to maintain the position and keep tight into the trunk. He does leg press, single leg press. He's doing his push-ups. He's down to actually 15 pounds now. We're doing alternating cable flies, box squat, and spider curls. So the test that we used initially for him,
His knees do during the one-legged.
leg press, pretty good. So he's actually, this is the testing stuff that we use. First it was we checked his squat, just to see, like, hey, does it make it, like, are you still getting pain in your knees? And it kind of went to, like, yeah, they actually feel really good. But now we walk him up the stairs, right? Because now he has a better indication. Every morning when he wakes up, like, the stairs are his, like, arch nemesis. So now I kind of have him go walk up and down the stairs, and we can see what it looks like. Because, like, someone in that presentation, they're kind of, like, doing this, and now he kind of can go almost straight down. And he's like, it's significantly better. Yes, significantly better. So you're looking at, again, something to think about though is, like, will he ever pull everything like back in? No, we're going to run into a limitation at some point. And that, actually our conversation this morning was, you know, I'm trying to put in some variety here with maybe our arm exercises, how we do for different curls, but like we don't got a lot of room for other lower body stuff. Most things are going to have to be somewhat bilateral because, like, again, for the most part, as soon as you put him in the single leg stance, like, his knee just does not like it, and it's going to try to start to twist a little bit, and you can hear it. And like he probably is a candidate for like a knee replacement at some point. We can hopefully just stave off as long as possible. But what was awesome was like we all kind of like were going in the same direction with our stuff, and any one of them can work. You just got to test. See if it works, and then have something that you're like checking against. Because what you don't know a lot of times is like, oh, I picked this exercise, and maybe they didn't have pain doing the exercise, but what they like if you went back and looked at one of their like original tests, it got worse, or like it's now painful, and it's like, yeah, they won't know it until they do something that gives them that feedback right away. Whereas if we go back and test something that's meaningful, we can adjust it right on the fly. So those two people. The reason why I picked them was because we actually have some information that shows, like, actually they've been training now for 4 months, and they've been pretty much moving along like pain-free, progressing quite a bit, where they're using load now pretty well, and the stuff that we've adjusted kind of aligns with all the things that we've been talking about. And when you make the right guess to some degree, you can have like a pretty cool outcome and keep them moving in a direction. Any questions or thoughts? Go for it.
You had done the assessment for Rachel.
Yes.
She asked me something about like, should I be doing some testing again? And I guess you did a toe touch test. What do you do when you do the toe touch test with her? And then what are you looking for? And then where are we going to see improvement if I did not do the assessment?
Feet together. Legs stay straight. Go down, touch your toes. Okay. All right. And what we're looking for is the hips to move backwards and the spine to flex segmentally and then be able to come up. All right. What you'll most likely see in a lot of people, if like they don't have that, is something like this. You see how my upper back is like really flexed and like nothing else is moving? Something like this. That hurts my hamstrings like a lot, but some people can do it. Or they go way out in front, right? And then the big thing too, sometimes like if it's like a chronic low back person, what you'll usually kind of get is something that looks like this. And come up. So Rachel couldn't touch her toes like at all. and we did like 2 things, and all of a sudden she went down and like buried it.
So what's your, I didn't happen to know, she was just talking to me on it recently. Like, what is your notation that you write on there to say pass, fail, where they are, whatever they are?
So this is a more of a SFMA kind of criteria. They have FN for functional, everything looks good. DN, dysfunctional, doesn't hurt, but like they get to like, they're like, yeah, I just feel my hamstrings. DP, dysfunctional painful, so they're like, oh yeah, my back really hurts. And then functional painful, yeah, they get down there, it looks good, but they're like, yeah, my back hurts.
Okay.
So she was a DN, I think, right? She was just dysfunctional. But as soon as she did a couple of the breathing things, she touched her toes. So like that's a good thing of like, a lot of times when someone's coming in and you're write their program, there should be like one thing kind of in your head to be like, oh, this new exercise, let's see if it's doing what we want, right? Do this, and then be like, hey, just show me like your toe touch. The reason why I typically don't necessarily go back and check the floor test again is just because it's like, it's kind of pain in the ass to get them back on the floor, go through these things. Unless it was something that was like really painful or like I was really trying to see if like this instigated any more, yeah, then I might go that way. But like a squat and a toe touch or like walking up the stairs, those things are a lot more tangible to people and meaningful, but plus it's like easy to just go, oh, go try that and see what happens. So you can pick whatever you want. So in some cases, like, again, if we go back through the SFMA stuff, it's easier. So like they would test internal rotation by doing that, right? It's just easy to test somebody, have them stand up and go through that and see like, hey, does that feel better? The only thing though is it's very messy, right? It doesn't take into account like, am I hiking my hip, right? Am I jetting my shoulder forward? Like all those things make it seem like someone can do it. Whereas if I lie you on your back, keep this fixed and just go this way, it gives me a pretty good idea as to like, hey, do I have it or not? Cool. Good?
So like if you're gonna test with a squat, it's not like
See that?
you're really gonna go back and be like, okay, let's test your squat. You would just see it on a daily basis if that's part of their programming.
So what do you mean by that?
So like if when we're going through and we're saying we're gonna program a squat into their program.
Yeah.
But that's also, but we know that, you know, they were having trouble either getting forced into the floor or they couldn't get too low or whatever their issue was. We would see that on a daily basis, on every.
So let's say, all right, we'll use client 1 for as an example, right?
Yeah.
So her squat test is, all right, feet shoulder apart, just reach your hands out comfortably, squat down as deep as you can.
Yeah.
That's it, all right? Our programming might be, all right, squat to a box and then come up with like a heel wedge or maybe like a plate reaching position. So then, yes, it's similar, but it's not the
Right.
same one. So is that what you're asking?
Somebody extreme.
Yeah.
So like the average person that we're seeing, you know, like so Paul, like sometimes his knees would go out in the beginning because he was staying so narrow, he wasn't widening, or he wasn't coming as low as he could, you know, things like that. Like I can tell week to week
So,
his squat's getting better.
so,
And
so let me ask you this. Does he know that?
so you're saying, so well, because we're one-on-one and it's just the two of us in here.
Sometimes you
I
can
mean,
make them.
We did make some modifications because he went away.
Yeah.
And he didn't do his program for a month.
Yeah.
And so his squat definitely was different.
So-
And so he knows that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have conversations, and I do have the ability when it's just one-on-one, that early in the morning with all this space to ourselves, that we switch things up when something's not working. And I'll have him come off the wedge, on the wedge, with a weight, without a weight. We've changed it, we've kind of played with it.
So, but what's your baseline to always refer back to? That's what you're trying to check on,
Okay.
right? So yes, it's going to alter week to
So, like,
week,
part
day
of
to
the
day. So,
program
yeah.
is a hold and 5 breaths before he does his regular squats, like Goblin said. So that's kind of your test?
If that for you, yes, right? If that's what you want to see, and what you want to, so what you're trying to also instill in somebody is like, for us as a coach, I want to see a different representation because of like what I think it should be. It doesn't always mean it's right? So like maybe client 1, maybe she has no business getting down to like a 99-degree parallel squat, right? It's just not in the cards for her. So what ideally I want to know is, well, where does she feel most comfortable and can she get out of fast? And is it different than the first time she did it? So if her first time she did it, it was like that. And now the second time she does it, it's there. And she's like, it just feels so much better. She has a representation in her head. Is like, oh my God, this worked, which is awesome. B, it gives us the information of like, whatever we just did also worked. And now it's like, well, where do we want to take this? So that's more of what you're trying to do. If your assessment is like, you know, he starts off like here and he gets 5 breaths and all of a sudden he's like much lower, it's telling you a lot of information. He's probably not breathing throughout the whatever he does otherwise, and it's keeping him compressed. As soon as we get him to fully get inhales and exhales, excursions, it gives him range of motion back. Awesome. It's easily changeable, and he should feel that too. And that's what you're using as a way to reinforce what you're doing.
Okay.
But the big thing is always like with all this stuff is you want to pick that baseline piece. Because like Annie and her split squats, right? Like that's a pretty good representation for her to understand like, man, I've made some progress. Or her deadlifts, like any of those things. Because like her first split squat was like, she's like, it doesn't feel good. And now she's holding weight and she can go down and out. So like you have the initial thing that you're looking at to give you the way to adjust, but also give that person the idea of like, oh wow, I've actually made progress as I'm going, without you having to like show them a chart and be like, hey, look what you did, which is a big piece of why people stick.
When you were talking, I don't really trust her either, but I can just tell when she does certain things.
Yeah.
And she knows she's made progress, so, you know.
So like an easy, I mean, you know Pat, right? Hers is a half kneeling, get off the floor, and then it's walking. So we'll do something maybe new, or she'll come in and she'll be like, I just don't feel great, tell you to Tommy. And we'll say, all right, try, see what it looks like to get off the floor. And like immediately, you know it's a good day because she'll go, no, it's a rough day because she'll go, right? And it's like, something's going on. We try some stuff. And then same thing with like walking. If we know it's a good day when, again, she's got a very bow-legged presentation where she kind of can go fast, but she's like doing this and she might get a little hiccup. But if it's not, it's like she has to really work at it. So yes, we're testing every day, but we also know what the baseline was before. And also like even now, we just did a get up and go test. Right? So she gets up off the chair, she walks around fast and comes back. So now we're actually timing to see how fast she can walk and turn at the same time. She's actually really fast, right? The test was like anything under 12 seconds. She did like 6. She just can't. So she's got the power to do it.
I used to do that with Bernie.
Yes, yes. But that's the thing is, right? You see how it progresses. It progresses over time. You might not be doing the same stuff because they've moved on to something different. And that's where, like in some of these cases, what we might do next is like for Kev here, it might be a push-up test like Beth was saying, because he's gotten to the point where like, yeah, you're actually like functional enough that we can start doing performance testing as opposed to maybe movement assessment.
Yeah.
Cool?
This was great.
Yeah, this was good.
You like this one? We're never doing it again.